thanks to Leanne for inviting us along to the Glasgow City Parents Group to talk about wellbeing and homeschooling as well. And we understand how busy you are, so we really appreciate you being able to take time to join us. So my name is Jenni Kerr and I'm the Nurture Development Officer for Glasgow. I've worked for Glasgow Education Services for 20 years as a support for learning worker, a teacher, and as an educational psychologist. So very pleased to be invited along today. I'll hand you over to Elisa.
Hi there, my name's Elisa Darling. I'm an EP in the South Office of Glasgow Psychological Service, and I've been here for a couple of years now. I'll let Larissa introduce herself as well.
Hi, I'm Larissa Cunningham and I'm also an educational psychologist from the South Office. I've been in Glasgow now for 18 months and was previously an educational psychologist in Portsmouth down on the South Coast.
So if you have had a day of homeschooling, possibly juggling work, and you've been able to log on tonight, well done to you. That's an achievement in itself. And if you're logging on at any other time, again, it's great that you're thinking about your well-being. So we hope you find the session useful. So I'll just outline the session just now. Elsa, if you're able just to move on, thanks. Okay, so here's our session content today then. So the first part is about ways to nurture your own well-being, because in Glasgow we're a nurturing city, and that means you as parents and carers as well as children can be nurtured too. And it's really important to look after our own well-being just now, because we've been dealing with COVID for quite a while, and I don't remember there being a manual for pandemic parenting. So we've been managing uncertainty and it's been part of what we do. So if you're feeling a wee bit emotionally zapped just now, that is a perfectly normal reaction and we're all doing our best. So we've put together some tips on how to look after ourselves just now. Then Elsa is going to talk through the signs of stress and also help to challenge some of those common negative thoughts that are around for us just now and help us with some balanced thinking. And then Larissa will have some practical ideas to help well-being for you and your family, as well as some top tips for homeschooling. We've also got a wee Q&A session just at the end where we'll be joined with Barry Syme, who's the principal psychologist, just to answer any questions that you might have. Next slide, please, Elsa. Thank you. So I've been doing a lot about well-being when we do a lot with staff and families about well-being, and the things that come up all the time when we talk about improving our well-being are I need to do more exercise and I need a better diet. And while these two things are really important and contribute to our own well-being, it's really helpful to open up our thinking about well-being a bit more and think about it a bit more widely. Next slide, please, Elsa. So let's think about our physical well-being, but also our emotional well-being as well. And when we're thinking about emotional well-being, this is including how we're checking in with our thoughts and feelings, social activities as well, giving ourselves time to relax, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute, and helping us to be resilient and also create some feelings of safety for ourselves as well. So to help you with all of this, you could develop a CAM plan. Next slide, please, Elsa. So a CAM plan is just having a think about your own well-being and then identifying some things that you enjoy doing and could be doing more of, or make them part of a daily or weekly routine. So there's a few wee things just to help with this. So thinking about checking in with your physical and mental health, just thinking about how things are for you and how you're feeling and how you're thinking. Acknowledging your thoughts and feelings as well. Elsa's going to talk to you a bit more about this in the next section. Looking for activities that can help you to relax and unwind. So what are your go-to activities? It's good to have a bank of these. And then, and this is the key one, being able to make time to nurture your own well-being. So including these check-ins and activities through the day or week. Next slide, please, Elsa. So having an emotional check-in then, and it is really straightforward. Our thoughts and feelings impacting our behaviour, as we know. So just taking a bit of time out to notice what we're thinking and what we're feeling can really help us tune in to how we're doing, and then we can decide how we're feeling. So we might think that we're doing pretty good, we're doing all right in the circumstances, or we might need some help, and thinking about what that might look like and who we could ask for help. Next slide, please, Elsa. Then thinking about your emotional well-being and what helps you to relax. So this would be a big part of your camp plan. Thinking about what your relaxing activities are and then planning how to build them in the week. So finding time can be a challenge. This is what we know. It's like, oh no, not another thing I have to do. So if we're able to make things part of our routine, it doesn't seem like it's something additional we're doing. So for example, if you practice mindfulness, are you able to do a 5 or 10 minute mindfulness activity, say first thing in the morning? Or maybe in the evening? I find certainly in the evenings is a lot easier than doing it first thing in the morning. So when do you build these things into your routine? Having a good work-life balance. So making sure you've got time, say to chat with friends, having that social time that you've got. So I had a Zoom call with my friend last week, and it's good just to have a blather and just to talk about things, and having a laugh is really important. So we found out, me and my friend last week, that over the pandemic, our washing machine had been shrinking our clothes. And it was so helpful to find out it wasn't just my washing machine that was shrinking all my clothes. So good to chat to people and think how you're going to do that, whether it's a wee Zoom call, just a phone call, or having a walk with somebody as well, because these are things that we used to do a lot of. So it's important to keep building that time in. And then thinking about your relaxing activities. Now, what would we have said pre-COVID? Oh, we're going on holiday. However, these days it's different, and it's about finding joy just in the small things. So even being able to go out for a walk, noticing things, noticing spring coming is a nice one that we've got just now. Even being able just to sit and do nothing is also can be quite relaxing as well. So thinking about what your relaxing activities are and thinking about how you can build them in. Next slide, please, Elsa. So thinking about our physical well-being, because it is so important, as we know just now, but the biggie is about sleep. So I'm wondering how your sleep is just now, because lots of funny things are happening to sleep patterns just now. So it can be good to get into some kind of routine in the evening that will help us to sleep better. And of course, we know the one is about screen time and to avoid screen time. I have to say I'm not great doing that myself, but really thinking how we can build in a routine to help us with our sleep, because that's the key thing, as well as our exercise, eating well, relaxation, and taking time for hobbies as well. Next slide, please, Elsa. Thank you. So really thinking about our camp plan and what it's all about is about understanding when our body and our brain just needs a break and being able to take it. So thinking about the signals then that when you notice you're feeling stressed, and how do you notice them? It might be somebody else close to you that says to you first, because other people sometimes notice it in ourselves because we just keep going a lot of the times. And then thinking, how do we unwind, and developing our camp plan so it's just part of our day-to-day and our routine. And you've probably got things in your head just now that you're thinking, oh, that's like a wee camp plan that I do. So it's all very helpful to manage our own well-being. And I'm going to hand over to Elsa just now, and Elsa's going to go through the signs of stress and to help us out with some balanced thinking for those wee negative thoughts that might be in our heads just now. Okay, thanks, Elsa.
Okay. Hey, hi everyone. So I'm just going to have a little think with you as to why are we feeling a little bit more stressed at the moment. It's normal to feel more stressed and anxious at the moment due to we are in keep forgetting, but we are in a global pandemic, you know, and there's many aspects of our daily life that are likely to impact on our levels of anxiety. because as we know, stress is a healthy, natural response to a perceived threat or danger that everybody experiences, but we all need that little bit of stress in our lives to perform. So stress kind of helps to protect us through our fight, flight, or freeze response, which includes sort of physiological reactions in our body and brain, and these sort of trigger us to react quickly and effectively under pressure. But these can cause problems for us when our stress response system overreacts or fails to turn off. So although it's normal and healthy, too much can really be unhelpful for us. And because of COVID-19, it is a possible invisible threat that's out there, and it can cause us to feel a loss of kind of sense of safety when we're out and about and walking past others, for instance. So it can make us a bit hyper alert. So your sleep, you might find, is a little bit affected because that fight, flight, freeze response is keeping going. And so it might not turn off, and it might stop you trying to fall asleep. So that's kind of an unhelpful time that it keeps going. Within the context of school closures, you might be managing a lot of different things at once. Your own work commitments, childcare, supporting your child with their learning at the same time, which is all stressful in itself. So, and due to an absence of our usual routines and this level of uncertainty, we have a lack of predictability at the moment and sense of time and purpose. So these restrictions can impact on our levels of motivation. So it's not uncommon to feel a lack of motivation at the moment. It's a bit unnatural as well to not see our friends and family as much. As humans, we really need that social interaction to feel a sense of connection. And you might be finding your relationships at home are a little bit strained. We're spending much more time with each other than we normally do. I know that's the situation in my household. And stress levels are likely to be elevated because we're restricted in what we can do to make us feel more calm and balanced. And it can also be difficult for children to engage in learning and for us to help them when we are feeling stressed ourselves. So it's just trying to remember the importance of bringing our stress levels down before we try and engage in learning. If things happen, if things get a bit fraught, it's okay. It's going to happen, but it's not most of the time. What we tend to remember is just things that happen most of the time, not those things that happen once in a while. With the emotional check-in that Jenni took us through earlier, it's important to take time to tune into how we're feeling. But it's also really important to think, how are we doing? Are we doing okay? Or do we need some help? But it's also helpful to tune into physical signs of stress on our bodies. And these can help us identify if we're stressed and remind us to take steps to reduce our stress levels. So we all experience the physical signs of stress differently, but some common physical signs can be things like headaches, feeling hot, racing heart, shallow breathing, muscle pain, butterflies, sweating or jelly legs, and feeling tense. So lots of different ones there, but it can be helpful to just take a little bit of time to notice your own physical signs of stress and what it feels like for you, because these can be a bit overwhelming sometimes, and it can be challenging to help others and feel calm and focus on learning when we are feeling stressed. So as well as noticing your physical signs, it's important to notice our thoughts, as these can impact on our mood and our behaviour. So if you take a moment just to notice your thoughts, what did you think when you got up this morning? Were your thoughts positive? Was your thought, it's going to be a best day ever, I can't wait to get up? I'm not sure how many of us would have had this thought though at the moment. Was it negative? Today will be terrible, I can't face getting up, for example. Or was it a bit more neutral? Today will be okay, I wonder what's in store. So based on your thought when you got up this morning, do you maybe need to reframe some negative thoughts to think of a more balanced thought? Is some of your thinking maybe a little bit unrealistic about what we're expecting of ourselves? And sometimes we set ourselves too many goals, or often ones that are unachievable, and we put loads of pressure on ourselves to almost be kind of superhuman, but we usually end up feeling defeated because these ideas and goals are unrealistic in the first place. For instance, you might want to think, I'm going to get all my jobs done off my to-do list by the time I go to bed tonight. But we forget all the factors that can impact on our ability to achieve this at the moment with everything going on. So our thoughts are also linked to our feelings and our behaviour. So the way we think about a situation affects our feelings, and feelings also provide feedback to our thoughts. So if we're experiencing a positive feeling, we're more likely to recognise the positives in a situation. So in the same way, how we feel about a situation can also affect our behaviour, because the physical signs of stress can affect the way we behave. And if we change the thought though, we can change the feeling, the body sensations and our behaviour. So this approach is all based on the cognitive behavioural model. and recognises that many of our anxious thoughts are often irrational, unrealistic, unhelpful. But if we're kind of aware of these links, it can help us to break that cycle. And to do this, we just need to identify some helpful and unhelpful thoughts and some patterns we might have with this. And we all have these unhelpful ways of thinking. It's something we all do, but it can lead us to, feeling worried, anxious, sad, angry, and it can be uncomfortable as well. But there are things we all fall into, and they often pop up kind of during or after distressing situations. So a really, really common unhelpful thinking pattern is to compare ourselves to others. And we can often judge our success in relation to others. And when we do this, we tend to compare ourselves unfavorably. We notice what things we haven't been able to achieve, and compare it to something someone else has. But don't worry if you do have a tendency to do this. We all do. It's kind of the way our brains are wired, and it's in our nature. What's important is more to notice when we're doing it. So, for instance, you might have compared yourself to other parents and families in terms of how much schoolwork you manage, or what you're able to get through if you have a job as well, how much you're able to achieve whilst you're homeschooling. But the important thing is we can't really compare ourselves to others, because it's like comparing apples to pears. They're both completely different. And what we need to remember is that everyone is different. Everyone has their own unique set of circumstances, which will impact on what you'll be able to manage. So social media is quite a good example of this. It can also be a source that kind of triggers these unhelpful comparisons. You might have a group WhatsApp or some sort of online forum. And although these can be helpful in some ways, someone might put up a post highlighting all the things they've achieved and a photo showing this, but often it doesn't reflect the whole truth of what's happened. We don't see the process it took to get them to this point, or we only see the end product, which is quite a perfect looking picture. But this can make us feel a bit inadequate, and we compare ourselves in this way, and this is just going to make the situation a bit worse and make us feel a bit more negative, and it makes us think, oh, this is unattainable for me. So while we all have these negative thoughts and cycles and feelings and behaviours, if we try to change them, the way we view a situation can affect our responses to them. So, for instance, by comparing ourselves to other families, we might experience an unhelpful thought, such as we aren't doing as much as other families. And in terms of getting through schoolwork, it could be housework, your own work, all the things that you're thinking you have to do. But one of the most effective ways to change this is to challenge it. So if we take a different perspective by remembering that, everyone's different, we all have our unique set of circumstances. Some might have more access to IT than others, some, even space to do these things. For learning and for say you have a work meeting, and some families might be coping differently with the effects of lockdown and not seeing family and friends. So it's really difficult to compare those. So if we were to take a little bit more of a balanced view, through this process, you can arrive at more balanced thoughts, such as, we have achieved what is possible for us. And it can help you change that cycle of how you feel about that. So there are many other unhelpful thinking patterns that we can fall into, and a few of them are just listed here. So you might see the world through negative glasses, where we only pay attention to the negatives, but we don't see our successes. We can disqualify positives, and this is where we don't account for the good things that have happened, or something you've done and make them seem unimportant. We can sometimes blow things out of proportion a wee bit, where we can catastrophize and expect a situation to be worse than it actually is. And we can also have unrealistically high expectations of ourselves, and this is quite a big one, a common one. When we don't meet these expectations, we think we've failed. And fortune telling is another one. Where we try and predict the future. We think we know what's going to happen as soon as that thought comes into our head. So if we take the following thought, we'll only manage 2 out of 4 tasks, and my child's on an hour of screen time today. This is a bit unhelpful here, as we're viewing the situation through a negative perspective, or that's kind of negative glasses, that one. So here we've kind of paid attention to the negatives, but not the positive. So although you managed to complete 2 tasks successfully, we aren't focusing on the things you had accomplished that day. So a more balanced thought might be, we managed to get 2 tasks completed successfully while I was juggling my own work calls. So it's not the end of the world as well if your child has some extra screen time at the moment. You can only do what's so much with your child whilst juggling other responsibilities, and this won't be forever. There's lots of different educational programs as well at the moment, like BBC Bite Size. And it's really important to actually remind ourselves, and I keep having to say this to myself too, we are in a global pandemic. So of course this is going to impact on our abilities to complete all our tasks. So try not to put pressure on yourself to be superhuman and achieve everything you would like to. So another unhelpful thought might be something like, my child isn't managing as much as others. They might be, and you think they might be behind the rest of their class. So this is where we might be blowing things out of proportion a little bit, where we might be catastrophizing and expecting a negative outcome. So as we spoke about earlier, it can be unhelpful to make comparisons, and it's quite, in terms of children and their peers, it is really unhelpful to think of your child compared to their peers, because every child's different. They're at different stages in their development. Some are coping better than with others, with the effects of lockdown in terms of motivation, their own levels of stress. They might be finding it challenging not seeing their peers, and online learning can be tricky as well. So, and we all know that some days can be better than others for us during this time. So it's really the same for our children. And all children are at different stages in their learning. And teachers are actually really used to differentiating for the needs of the young people in their class. So it's something just to bear in mind. And if we take this into account, a more balanced thought might be, my child is managing what they can within the current circumstances. And lastly, sort of placing unrealistic expectations on ourselves can make us feel, we're failing, or they can just lead to feelings of guilt and inadequacy. So an example of this could be, I'm spending a lot of time with one child, and you feel like you're letting the others down if you have more than one child. But children need different levels of support at different stages of their development. Children don't all need to be working directly one-to-one with an adult to be learning. Independence is really a key skill that all children need to learn. Time on their own can give them opportunities to consolidate skills and concepts they've learned earlier. And for instance, playing a game is a really simple way of doing this. So a more balanced thought in that sense could be, they're building their independent skills by having a go at a task by themselves. So, and you can, just to remember, you can only do what is realistic for you as a family. If you feel you aren't coping with the level of work that's suggested by your child's school, get in touch with your child's teacher and highlight what's realistic for you as a family, because they want to hear from you. And something to bear in mind when thinking about these unhelpful or irrational thoughts is that within the context of a pandemic, there is that possible threat of COVID-19. So although, those thoughts aren't always irrational, there might be times where the shifting attention tasks, which Larissa is going to take us through shortly, might be a little bit more helpful in these instances. So I'll now pass you over to Larissa, who's going to take us through some practical strategies for you and your child.
Thanks, Elsa. Yeah, so now we're going to have a think about some helpful strategies for managing stress in the moment. Also thinking about some ways that we can help to manage home learning, including thinking about the importance of play, and also thinking long term about our kind of self-care and our relaxation. So nurturing our well-being. But before we start, I think again, we just really want to acknowledge and thank all of you and all of the other parents out there who are supporting their children's learning at home, whilst also juggling their own jobs and managing your usual day-to-day activities and pressures. And I think from all of us, it's kind of saying you have been and are continuing to do a fantastic job. And let's hope that over the next few weeks and the months, we'll all start to see that normality back in each of our lives. We are all resilient, and children and young people are resilient too. So we will all bounce back from this. So first of all, we're just going to think about a few in the moment activities that you and your child could do together, which can help to keep us in the present. It can give everyone that moment to just breathe and help to bring those immediate stress levels down. Thanks, Elsa. So grounding is a way of bringing us back to the here and now, and it can be really helpful in managing overwhelming feelings or anxiety. And it's a great way to calm down quickly. And there's some different grounding techniques that we can use, and one of these is shifting your attention. So when you or your child are experiencing strong feelings of stress and anxiety, you can try focusing on your senses. So either in your head, or you can say it out loud. You can take a minute to really concentrate on your environment and name 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch or feel, 2 things that you can smell or taste, and then take 1 long, slow breath. Thanks, Elsa. So another technique that you can try is using breathing exercises, and this one is called mindful hands. So if you hold out one hand and then slowly trace the fingers of this hand with your index finger of your other hand, starting at your wrist and moving up your thumb. And as you go up each finger, you breathe in, and as you go down each finger, you breathe out. And you work your way up and down each finger, continuing on to the next. Once you've reached your 5th finger, you can swap directions and go back to where you started. And whilst doing this, you can focus on your breath and how that's feeling, but also how your fingers are feeling as you run your index finger between them. And if your hands are anything like mine, probably quite dry and feeling in need of a bit of TLC from all the hand gel that we've been using over the last few months. But you can also do this at the same time as your child, and you can help them to follow if they need some support. So another breathing exercise is known as square breathing, and this is where we can use a breathing square to help give a structured visual, and this can be really helpful for children. So you begin by breathing in for 4, and then you hold your breath for 4, and then breathe out for 4 counts, and then hold. So as you can see on the screen, you can follow this round in a square, and you can almost draw the picture as you're doing it. Or if you print it out, you can support your child by tracing their finger along each side of the square and breathing in and out with them. And this can keep being repeated just until those feelings of stress and anxiety reduce. So I guess, once again, parents that are homeschooling and working from home are really walking kind of tightrope at the moment, juggling things from supervising and supporting their children's learning, whilst also trying to keep up with demands of their own job. By no means an easy task. And maybe that feeling of being spread a bit too thinly and not actually feeling like you're doing a great job at either homeschooling or your work commitments. And I think if that is how you're feeling at the moment, please don't feel alone in feeling that way. Many parents up and down the country will be feeling similar and wondering how best to manage it all. And there's no easy answer, and different things will work for different families. All we can do is our best. And what we've tried to do here is just pull together a few ideas of some things that can be helpful, maybe to support with this balancing act that we're all kind of, and all the things that we're juggling at the moment. And we've grouped these into 3 key areas. So the first one is thinking about maintaining routine and structure. It's then thinking about how we can support children's learning, and then finally making sure that we're being kind to ourselves. So when we're thinking about kind of routines and structure, it can be really tempting, particularly when we're working from home and we don't have to get up to do the school run, to turn the alarm clock off and let everybody stay in their pajamas until midday. But getting up and aiming to be ready to start work and home learning around the usual time will really help yourselves and children to get into the right mindset, and helping to maintain children's routine as best as possible whilst homeschooling will also help to give them structure in their day, to give them focus and help them to feel a little bit more in control of themselves. So we can also think about having our day and breaking this up into manageable chunks, which can of course be flexible. So when homeschooling alongside working, setting manageable chunks for different tasks can help to stop your day feeling like it's spiraling out of control. So maybe take a little bit of time and try and think about when your children might work best and when they need the least input from you, and then plan your more focused work periods to fit in with those. Possibly breaking up your day into segments and giving your children time to support them within that and their capabilities, but they can also have some time to do some independent work. And how this will work will depend on how young your children are, how independent they are. So for example, if you've got a P7 child, they might be able to concentrate on a task for half an hour. But if your child's in P1, doing your work in maybe 10 or 15-minute chunks might be a bit more realistic. It could also be helpful to think about setting some daily priorities. So we all know that we might not be as productive working at home, particularly with children around, as we might be if we were in our usual workplaces. So each morning, maybe try to take stock of what needs to be achieved that day and draw up a list of priorities. So it might be, for example, that you've got a conference call that you really need to attend, but you've also got some admin tasks to do. But your priority would be the conference call, and the admin tasks could wait until the end of the day, but they could also roll over till tomorrow if need be. And I think also here, linking with what Elsa was talking about earlier, it's really important for us to be realistic and thinking that even though, throughout this lockdown, the chances are that the person on the other end of the conference call has also got kids at home, or the dogs are in the background, or the washing's on. So they'll be very sympathetic to these distractions. But sometimes having that to-do list of tasks to do, it can be really satisfying to cross those things off the list, but just helpful if we've prioritised what those key things are. And then also it's really important that we do schedule in some breaks within our workday. When we are working in the office and children are at school and they go out for playtime and lunchtime, I think naturally we do take more breaks, and there can be a bit of a tendency for us maybe working from home to think we need to be at our screens all of the time. But it is really important that we take chunks of time out to spend with our children, and to help alleviate potentially some of that guilt that might be there with trying to juggle work and family all within the same environment. And one of the big keys to surviving this work homeschooling kind of balance is to be flexible in your approach. We don't want to beat ourselves up if our children aren't getting through all their schoolwork, or if there's been a day where we weren't able to get through as much and they needed to have a little bit more screen time. Keeping in touch with your employer and how you're managing your workload can also be really helpful as well. And just taking some time to spend some time with your children, shifting your focus away from work and having that time to just breathe. And I guess in all of this as well, even though we are juggling the working from home and the homeschooling, if children were at school then you were at work, you're actually getting to spend a little bit more time with your children that won't be there forever once we go back to normality. So almost make the most of that bit of time as well. We will all get through this. Children's learning will all be there. They'll be back into schools. We will all bounce from this. And the last bit that I just wanted to add on here was just thinking about how planning some stress-free meals. So I'm sure things like I'm hungry, or can I have a snack, or what time is lunch are kind of comments or familiar questions in your home at the moment, and feeling like you're endlessly maybe needing to provide food, which can interrupt with your work commitments as well. So maybe try and have a plan of what you might want to eat each day, or there could be a tub of snacks for children that they can access, or maybe try keeping to making the packed lunches the night before as though it was a school day, so that you haven't got to take time out thinking about what food might be there. It's already there in the fridge, ready. Or better still, you could use a play-based learning opportunity to teach children to make their own sandwiches, and that could be a way of supporting their learning but also ticking off lunch. Thanks, Elsa. So thinking now just a little bit about a few ideas of how we can support home learning. And I guess, it may seem like a monumental task, but it is possible to support children's learning while you're working from home, even on the busiest days. And you have been doing this, for the last few weeks since before Christmas, and also supporting them in our lockdown last year as well. And depending on your children's ages, if there are things that they need your help with, you could get them to write down their questions so that you can look at them together when you've got a break in your schedule. But if this means they can't finish a task, you can just help them to move on to a next one and then come back to it, or the child could take a break until you are able to help. And I guess appreciating that younger children will probably need a bit more input from the adults around them, but also their tasks might be shorter too. So you might need to only give them 5 or 10 minutes assistance at a time. And as Elsa had mentioned, there's lots of really, really good educational videos and resources out there that we can use, that children can watch independently, and they are learning from that. And I think one thing that we can all take from the pandemic is everybody pulling together to make these resources. Going forwards, I think we now have such a wealth of materials out there that we didn't have before the pandemic started, and hopefully we'll still be able to use these once we go back to normal. And depending on your child's age, so thinking more here about any parents of children at secondary school, you could begin or end the day by checking in with them. I think maybe with our young people in secondary schools, we might be feeling that we're not quite as aware of what's going on with their schoolwork, how much work they're getting through. But if we can help to plan and prioritise with them and help them to take more ownership of their learning, this can be a good strategy to support them with developing their independent skills, but also feeling that you've got a bit of an idea of what's going on and what they're getting completed. So in the morning, you might ask them what classes or subjects do they have that day? Have they got any tests that they need to complete? Do they need any resources to get on with their work? What help might they need? And then at the end of the day, you could find out how far they got in their learning tasks and what did they discover, what was hard, and what could we do to make tomorrow better? So reflecting on that day and then thinking about what could be different tomorrow to support them further with their learning. And that can really help them to take ownership. And then the last bit when thinking about home learning is thinking about, we just cannot forget the importance of play. And I guess when we think about childhood, play really is that kind of universal language of childhood, and it's through play that children understand each other and they make sense of the world around them. And when children are asked about what they think is important in their lives, playing and being with friends is usually at the top of the list. And at the moment, we know that children can't meet up with their friends and have those play date opportunities as much as maybe we would like to. But there's still ways that they can play and engage with those activities to support their development and that kind of enjoyment in life. And also, it is hard at the moment when none of us have got much time to ourselves, which can put the pressure and stress on relationships with people in our homes. But play can be a really helpful way to achieve fun and have connection too. And as adults, we also need opportunities to play and to have fun. And I think, it might not be thinking about it like children's play, but when we maybe used to go to the cinema or go bowling, or we might go out for a game of football or some golf or go dancing, that's an adult way of playing and having that fun and doing all of those things too. So when we think about why is play important, so play is actually one of the main ways in which children learn and develop, and it helps to build children's self-worth by giving them a sense of their own self abilities and to feel good about themselves. And because it's fun, children often become very absorbed in what they're doing, and it can be really important to children's development, and they can develop lots of skills through play. It can help develop their language skills, their emotions, their creativity and social skills. And play can also really help to nurture children's imagination and give them that sense of adventure. And through play, they're learning essential skills such as problem solving, working with others, sharing, and so much more. So if we think about the little pictures that we can see on the screen in front of us, so thinking about children's cognitive development, so our thinking and learning skills. Through play, children are developing their ability to concentrate. Things like sand and water play for younger children can be a really good early introduction to science and maths. So thinking about the fact that water's fluid, it's not solid, it can be measured in different containers. Building blocks and jigsaws and different shapes can help with developing our skills of putting things in order and developing logic. And also, children are learning to plan and to monitor and to evaluate skills through playing. So what do I want to build? What do I want to do? Is it balancing? Does it look like what I was trying to do? They're in a constant dialogue with themselves, and that can really help to develop those thinking and learning skills that the children need for in the classroom to support with their learning. So we can also help develop children's social skills. So the games can help with turn taking and sharing and learning how to get along with each other, and also for negotiating different roles and rules. It can support children's emotional development. So things like playing with like Play-Doh or drawing and painting pictures, dressing up, can help to encourage creativity and imagination and support children in learning to express their feelings. So they're learning to understand their world, and through play, they're learning to talk about their feelings and experiences. And they're learning how to manage the emotional aspect of being with others. So we're thinking about self-control here. And they're also learning to watch different facial expressions. And one other really important skill that children learn to develop through play is language, and in particular thinking about their vocabulary development. So names of different objects, what they might do with objects, putting sentences together, having those conversations, role playing, so maybe they're playing shops or they're playing doctors or vets. And if adults are supporting children with their play, they can help to model and extend children's language. Children are learning to listen and to pay attention, having opportunities to ask questions. They're interacting with others. It's almost giving them opportunities to kind of rehearse and learn different skills, different language, and how we might use that in different social situations. And it also really supports then children's written skills when they're in the classroom. So developing children's oral language skills, particularly through play, is a key driver to them then being able to translate that into written language. So for example, writing stories and things. And then finally, it can help children's physical development. So supporting their fine and gross motor skills, playing ball games or dancing and running helps to build that strength, their flexibility and coordination skills. And I think it's just to say it's okay to incorporate lots of play into home learning. And there might even be ways that you can turn some of the activities and work sent home by teachers into play-based activities, which could help just make things more manageable at home. And then the last little bit here, just before we round off and go to the Q&A session, is just thinking about being kind to ourselves. And as Elsa had mentioned, our bodies all need a little bit of stress and it's good for us, but too much, when we have too much of it, this is when it becomes the problem. And for all of us, the pandemic with homeschooling, it's an additional and an ongoing stressor that's having a significant impact on many aspects of our lives. But being kind to ourselves, this has been a marathon for all of us, and we're not at the end of the race yet, but there is light at the end of the tunnel and it's shining brighter every day. So when we think about our stress levels, it can be helpful to use this bucket analogy, and this can be helpful to use when talking to children about stress and coping strategies as well. So if you think about your bucket as this being the combination of all the different stresses in our lives, but we all have different sizes of buckets. And the strategies that we have available help us to keep our buckets from overflowing. So they're like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket and help us to not feel overwhelmed. Thanks, Elsa. So to help boost our well-being and to manage those stress and anxiety levels, it's important we make time for things that we enjoy doing. This is to make sure we have our effective water taps and that we keep our buckets balanced. And it can be helpful to identify different activities that boost and drain our energy or our mood. And you can explore this with children too. So if we're thinking about energy boosters, it might be helpful to ask ourselves and children, what are we good at? What do we enjoy doing? What do we look forward to? When are we most focused? And it might be helpful to write a list of different boosting activities or collect some into a box at a time when you and your children are feeling calm, but then you've got them as a kind of grab and go when they're needed, and you can incorporate them within your day. And we can also use positive psychology to promote well-being and resilience through encouraging people to engage in simple and intentional activities. So for example, thinking about gratitude diaries or 3 good things. So something that you could do and also do with your children is to think about 3 good things. So each day or week, you could encourage children to write or draw, take photos of 1, 2 or 3 good things. And you might also want to create something like a lockdown scrapbook or a memory book with all the things that they have enjoyed. And then finally, as well as having a few tricks up our sleeves for helping to manage those stressful moments in the moment, we also need to think about how we can manage our stress levels longer term. So it's important that we schedule in time for relaxing things during the week, even if we think we haven't got the time. And this can help all of us, including children and young people, to relieve a build-up of pressure and anxiety and give us ways to unwind and calm down. So physical activity is really important, as this can help to channel some of that nervous energy. It can release those endorphins in our bodies or the happy hormones, which can help to counter the stress hormones. But you might also want to try some progressive muscle relaxation or guided relaxation with children, which can be a way of helping us to tense and then relax our bodies. And it can be a really useful strategy for maintaining resilience during difficult times. And there are a few different ways that you can practice guided relaxation. And if you Google this, you'll find that there's some audio recordings or YouTube videos, or you could also equally use your own imagination to create your own recordings. And a good sleep routine and diet are also really key for helping to manage stress. And I think just the final kind of thing for me to say is don't feel guilty or try to be superhuman, and just do what works for you. This is about survival. No one is expecting parents to be full-time teachers or to be experts in education. We don't want parents beating themselves up. It's important at this time that we all just do our best, and we remember that nurturing, loving and supporting children's social and emotional well-being should be all of ours top priority.